Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Soul Centered CEO Show. I'm so excited to be back with you this week and also to be joined by the fabulous Dr. Serena Sterling. Welcome, Serena, to the show.
Thank you so much, Haley, for having me.
So, I do want to share just a little bit about your background because it's so diverse, and I think it just will really lead to a deeper level of the conversation today. You hold a master's and a doctorate in, a master's in international journalism and a doctorate in clinical psychology, and you're also a certified life coach. You help people with physical and emotional pain to feel better faster by uncovering repressed emotions that are keeping them stuck so they can return to the lives they love. I love this so much. You've lived in Portland, San Francisco, London, New York City, all over. You're a world traveler. You started your coaching practice in 2008. You've had offices in all of those cities, and you work with people from all over the world through your remote sessions. So we're going to dive right in, Serena, because I think what's so fascinating about some of the work that you do, it's the I would say the broad spectrum, right, of people, I think is so fascinating. But before we dive into that, I'd really love for you to share a little bit about your background, your story, if you will, of how you kind of evolved into doing this work. And I know you've just written a book. We're going to talk a little bit about that too. But I'd love for the listeners to have an understanding of kind of what got you here, right? Where did you start? And how did you kind of follow the breadcrumbs, as I like to say, to get to this work that you're doing right now?
Okay, well, I have two parts of the story because when I was younger, I come from a really highly athletic family, but it was a really competitive family. And I think a lot of people do feel that pressure to succeed in some way in their families. But mine, I just kind of like around age 8, I remember skiing in Sun Valley, and like I was on Elkhorn, what was it called? Elkhorn Mountain. And then I knew that like as soon as I got better, I'd have to progress to Baldy Mountain. And I just got the sense that the bar was never, there was always, you do that and then it just goes there and you have to keep, and I was like, this is BS. Like, I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this light bulb moment where I was like, you know what, when I am sick, I get to stay home from school. My brother can't roughhouse me with me. I get more attention from my parents. And I felt that was what was missing. So I concocted this great strategy to get more attention by pretending to have pain in my feet and my hands. Like gymnastics class, I'd be like, oh, I can't do a handstand, my hands hurt. Or like ballet, I'd be like, oh, my feet hurt. Would limp home from this bus station, even though I really wasn't limping. Like it was just all fake. And basically I got into manifesting it was like for the reverse, for something, kind of bad. And I ended up with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So I've always held that memory of how I developed arthritis. It wasn't some sort of virus that came on, attacked my body, and I have been with arthritis ever since. So I have that one story. And then I always like to write, and I was interested in journalism, and I actually wanted to create my own magazine. I wanted to create a magazine on like people overcoming adversity, but I wanted to get a degree in journalism first. So that was my trajectory. Like that's what I was going to do. And so I got a master's in journalism. I worked at magazines in London and Portland and New York. And, but I was in New York City on 9/11. I had just joined, I became assistant editor at Spirituality and Health magazine, which is located 3 blocks from where the World Trade Center was. So on my way to work, I got stuck in the subway at Wall Street. By the time I came above ground, it was a complete whiteout because the first tower had fallen. And there was a lot of stuff that I experienced that day that was really traumatizing. And as a result, I also came from a family that was not very, they weren't about like, how do you feel today? It was more of like, have you done your homework? Like, what sports are you doing? Kind of thing. It was just achievement oriented. So I just didn't really express my emotions. I tried, but I was like overwhelming. The amount of like trauma from 9/11 was overwhelming. So got really tired, went to my medical doctor, diagnosed me with chronic fatigue, told me there's no cure, learned to cope. Wasn't acceptable to me. I had already been introduced to this one technique when I was in undergrad in Portland called neuro-emotional technique. I found a doctor in New York, and even after one session, I felt so much better.
Wow.
So I kept going, and within 3 weeks, I was like 100% better. But she also put me on a very restrictive diet, supplements, homeopathic remedies, but all of that combined, what I was amazed by was the fact that she could identify the emotions that I had repressed
Mm,
from 9/11, from like other times that were affecting the fatigue.
yeah.
And I was fascinated by that mind body connection. So I changed careers and got a doctorate in psychology. But then I also wanted to be able to work with people everywhere, not just in my state. If you're a licensed psychologist, you can only work with people in your state.
Right.
So that's why I decided to branch out, get more training in mind body therapies, get more coaching experience, and do what I do now.
Oh, I love how you have used, and I feel like I say this on every show, but it's like we use our greatest suffering and sadness to become a blessing and to be of service, right? And I think what I've experienced of you in your work is that that's exactly what you've done. You've taken those moments of emotional distress and sadness and suffering, and you've been able to create a life and a business to where you can help other people alleviate that, or at least lessen that to a significant degree. So it's NET, neuroemotional technique, is one of the techniques that you use within your practice now. Again, with clients all over the world, you work with all kinds of different clients. Do you want to share with us a little bit about some of the more common things, right? So I'm assuming that there's maybe a few categories of clients that you work with, or chronic situations that you're working with clients today.
Yes. So NET is like the base foundation, and then I've just like evolved in terms of like learning different things and then kind of combining it all into my own thing.
Yeah, your own
Hopefully
signature
we'll keep
framework.
evolving.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like this helps anyone really. It helps like people with anxiety or depression or relationship or career issues, and also people with physical elements like chronic fatigue or joint issues. But even like I was focusing on athletes for about 5 years because I was noticing that the athlete will be like, oh, my shoulder hurts, but it's not actually the shoulder, it's their
Right,
anxiety about performing or something like that.
right. And no, so you kind of go to that deeper level where I would say the majority of from a healthcare perspective, from a traditional healthcare perspective, it'd be like, oh, symptom, treatment, like pain, a medication, or whatever it is, right? But you're able to go a little bit deeper and really dive into the emotional experience that they're having. And the symptom is just that. It's just the symptom of the emotional situation and the repressed emotion. It's fascinating. So specifically with athletes, do you still do a lot of work with athletes, and what were the main issues that you found with them?
Well, let's see. It's a good question because I feel like everyone is so unique. I mean, a lot of it is just this pressure to succeed, and if they don't succeed, they're kind of like, well, this is my whole identity. Like, what do I do? And that's why also I worked with a lot of retired athletes. So that was really fun. That was like they they not only have depression or anxiety after being off the team, but they also have pain now, and their teams aren't paying for them because they're no longer working for the team.
Right,
So, but a lot of the pain is intertwined with their identity of like, well, what do I do now? Like, I've worked my whole life to be on this team. And
right.
now, and everyone knows me. And it's kind of like also when you're young, you just think you're going to be young forever.
Sure. Of course, yeah.
And then all of a
So
sudden you're like
it's
this.
like the crisis point for them, really, crisis of identity.
Yeah, right. Because like you and I, we're getting older. We're kind of like, oh gosh, another birthday. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's not like wrapped up in like, well, what do I do now with my life? Like,
right, yeah. And who am I? I could see where that would definitely be cause of stress and anxiety, and definitely not a place of peace or clarity. Wow, it's really interesting because I've also been familiar over the years with how like back pain is really a manifestation of emotional distress and or financial instability or insecurity. So I love how you've been able to really dive into all the different layers, and I've watched you in action personally, um, where you were able to really identify a specific situation, a specific moment in time in the timeline of our life, right? That could have anchored a feeling, and an emotion in that moment that years later can manifest as anxiety or depression or any variation of suffering, if you will. And then through your, like you said, your specific framework that you've put together, all these different modalities, been able to immediately find relief. And maybe not completely, not like on maybe like on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe not a 10, but like a 7 at least, right? So like definitely, even in just one experience with you, being able to get relief potentially from something that someone's been suffering for years, decades even, right? And I think for you specifically, a lot of people find you after they've tried everything. Would you agree? Like they've done maybe the more traditional paths, and then they find you and are like, wow, I've tried everything else. I'm down. Like, show me what you got. Is that kind of normal for you in your experience?
It is. And I've often wondered, like, is it better that way because they're now at this place of like desperation? Or would it be better if, like, they go to one doctor and the doctor's like, you know what, this seems like something Serena can solve? Because
Yeah.
I've had people who've gone through like 12, like a dozen doctors, and they've gone and they're like, and I've done like the ones that are really kind of weird, that are like iridology or whatever it's called, like, and and they're just like, but I can't figure it out. Or they read the books, and there are a lot of mind body books out there, and I feel like those are sometimes, or you go on these like websites and you hear these success stories and it makes you think, what's wrong with me? Maybe it's not emotional, maybe it is physical, and all these doctors just haven't been able to figure it out. Like, oh my gosh, what if I just stuck with this for the rest of my life? Because there's obviously a way that other people are doing it. And
Yeah.
that's where I think it's helpful to see someone like me, honestly, because then it's kind of like, no, you can't do this on your own. Like, I can't do this on my own just by like thinking about it. I have to use my own
Right.
techniques.
Yeah, you do it on yourself, and you also trade with some friends and colleagues. I know that is part of your normal self-care practice as well. Wow, it really is fascinating how, and really unfortunate how we don't have that. Well, and sometimes some healthcare providers are kind of opening up to more alternative options, if you will. I don't think of it as alternative. I think it's complementary, right? So you try one thing, if it doesn't work, great, try some other things. It may not be a physical solution, and it may not be a chemical solution to the problem. It could be an emotional situation that requires focusing on that versus adding more drugs or adding more surgery or whatever it is, right, when it's an emotional situation. So speaking of the emotional side of it, I would love for you to share a little bit now about the book that you just wrote, that came out earlier this year, called Pain, a Love Story. And I think you mentioned, your own personal experience when you were little and the arthritis and all of those things. Do you want to share a little bit about why you decided to write that book, and what your personal intention and your maybe professional intention is behind it? Because I mean, writing a book is not easy. It's like birthing something major, right? And so I would love to hear a little bit about kind of what your process was and your intention, and maybe even some of the stories and the feedback that you've gotten so far from the book. I'd love to hear that.
Well, I wrote the book because I feel like my story is unique in the fact that most people don't um, go to extremes to create pain in their body. But it wasn't like, underneath that desire was the desire to have love and attention that I felt I wasn't getting, because I had this older brother and he was like the golden child and he always got all the more attention. And even if he was like roughhousing with me, my parents never came to my defense. They're always just like, oh, ignore him, or he's showing you he loves you. And so I felt like that was a unique part of it. But then also I go through other stories in my life, not just when I was younger, but also then when I was older, and showing how and why I ended up shutting off my emotions, and how that would develop into some sort of pain or other symptom. And so I did that in a way that was like, I'm not this doctor that has all the answers. I want to be relatable. I'm still working on my own issues as well. And so I just think there's always this like this distance. I felt that when I was studying psychology. I was like, I'm not going to tell some psychologist my real things because I don't feel connected. I don't feel there's got to be some sort of more of like ease of like, okay, wow, she's gone through it too. So there was that, but I also then wanted to interweave client case stories where it was really showing how this is the symptom, this is what they've tried, this is why it hasn't worked, is because it's something emotional. Like this one girl had extreme anxiety, almost verging on panic attacks all the time. And every 6 months, her medication, her antidepressant medication would stop working and she would have to like get on a different one or like up the dosage. And I started working with her, and all of it stemmed from her abusive father when she was younger. And it just had caught up to her that she had never really dealt with it. She just repressed it all. And she used to take a lot of recreational drugs when she was younger as a way to just like a lot of people do for addiction purposes, like they want an escape. And that had also affected her serotonin and other things. And so it just, like what she was like in her 20s, this went back to like when she was a child. And then I had her come back the next week to give her my report of findings, and I did not recognize her. Like I thought she was late to the appointment. I told the receptionist, I was like, "Hey, can you call Sarah? I think that she's like, can you just find out if she's coming?" And she's like, "No, she checked in 5 minutes early. She's in the waiting room." I was like, "No, that's not her."
Because she looks so different already.
So different. And I was like, I walked up to her and I was like, "Is that, oh," because I recognized her girlfriend a little bit. And then I asked them, I was like trying to figure out, why do you look so different? And she said that she had gone home after the session. She slept for 12 hours. And then the next day, she did all these things that she was having problems doing before. Like she had developed anxiety about driving in a car, and like she'd go shopping and she couldn't see the exits. And so just the feeling like agoraphobia was one thing she had also. And then so she went shopping, she drove a car, she did like 8 loads of laundry, she organized, and she decided to create a cleaning company because she was like out of work. And so it's like fascinating to me and amazing, even though I do this, even though I do it, it's like people can have amazing results after even just one session.
And I can't imagine, I mean, I can only imagine how satisfying that would be, right? Because like you said, they've been dealing with those issues for sometimes their whole life, you know, and have tried everything and have had such a huge amount of suffering. And to be able to shift that quickly, that's a gift. That's a beautiful gift. I love it so much. That's a beautiful example. And that's part of what you share in the book too. Is there any other stories that you feel like were just like, wow, like you said, even though you do this every day, right? Is there anything else that stands out that for the listeners that might be suffering with anxiety or depression or with chronic pain or something that maybe they have tried everything? Is there anything else that you'd like to share with them as far as giving them hope, if you will?
Well, the person that comes to mind is someone who, it wasn't necessarily, the issue didn't stem from like something within her. It was that she was really concerned about her dad, who was an alcoholic. And
Okay.
so and she was like, personal trainer who was gorgeous and did all the right things and knew so much about health and wellness, and she read the books and she was able to get rid of some of the pain a few years ago, but then like it came back. And that's something that does happen with chronic pain that is steeped in like emotional stuff. Like you can have the pain in your hip and then you'll figure out like, oh, it's due to this, and then that will go away, but then it's called symptom imperative, I think, and it goes to like your neck or something, and it's because the root issue has never been truly
Gotcha.
figured out. So we did a few sessions, and then it kept coming back to her dad, and I was like, "What's going on with your dad?" And she just burst into tears, and she was like, "He's an alcoholic. No one knows about this. Like, I'm so ashamed." And
Wow.
and she is the one. She's got all these siblings, and they were just like, "Leave him alone. Like, why do you bring stuff up? It just makes the night worse." And so she had to like basically turn off those concerns, but it was still in the back, like the back burner is your body kind of thing. And so it was affecting her, and she had to finally make like process those emotions herself. Like
Yeah.
I helped her figure that out in terms of like, okay, the anger, the sadness, the like feeling hopelessness, like you can't do anything about it. And then getting to a stage of, do you think that it would help if you did talk to your dad? If you told him, like, you know what, your issues are actually affecting me, and this is why. Like, if I ever have kids, like, I'm not going to bring them near you after 5 o'clock, for example, because you get wasted, that kind of stuff. And it worked. Like, not only did her pain go away, but she got her dad help.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And it's so fascinating. I mean, I've studied anatomy multiple times in my life, like all 600 hours of yoga teacher training. And it's just interesting. There is such a connection with our body and our emotions. Like, there is no way to disconnect them, right? And we store those things in our body on different levels and in different times of our lives. And the ability that you have to really just pinpoint that is so fascinating to me. And I just think there's probably so many people that don't realize that this type of healing, this type of treatment is available. So I'm so excited that not only that we're having this conversation, but that the work that we're doing in the world is so powerful and so impactful. It's so beautiful to see that. So with that, Serena, I would love to make sure everyone knows how to find you, right? So, and also where they can purchase your book if they're interested. And because to me, that would feel like a really great starting point to kind of dive into a little bit more about your work. And then if they're feeling called to reach out to you, I know you have a special session, I think, that you offer. Maybe do you want to share with us a little bit about that?
So it's really easy. It's just drserenasterling.com. I use that also for my handles on social media, Instagram, Facebook. And then, so Pain, a Love Story, you can find on Amazon. And everyone's been saying it's a quick read, that it's a page turner, because it sounds like I'm just sitting there next to you telling you stories, which is great. And what was the other thing?
The other thing was, if they feel like they wanted to reach out to you and just at least have a kind of an exploratory conversation, I think that's something that you have available as well.
Yes.
Quick chat, 15, 20 minutes.
Yep.
Okay. And they would do that on your website as well, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Okay. So for those of you that are listening and you want to connect with Serena, definitely go to her website, definitely grab her book. And you just made it available in Audible on audio format as well, right?
If you do want to do the quick chat, I'm actually I'm going to be changing that to doing like an application process.
Okay.
But if you say that you watched this from Haley's, you get the quick chat, the 15 minutes or so.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. And maybe we can, for sure we'll put the link to your website and also the book link as well. And then if there's anything else, Serena, that you want us to share with the listeners, we for sure will do that. So I appreciate that offer so much. It was so lovely to have you. Baxter always makes his appearance known. It's so lovely. But again, it's a blessing to have you, and so thankful for the work that you're doing in the world. So thank you for being here. And for all of you listening, we hope that this was a benefit for you and that you'll join us next time on the Soul Centered CEO Show.